In the states that cannabis is mandated for lab testing, I think people assume that your cannabis is safe to smoke because it's been lab tested, right? What most people don't know about lab tested cannabis is there's not a lab in the country that's actually testing for quality. They're only chemotyping. And chemotyping means they're looking for types of chemistry such as cannabinoids, terpenes, microbials, pesticides, and thank God they're looking for pesticides, right? But cannabis that is past lab testing still has spider mites on it. Why? Because what lab in the country looks for insects at all? Do labs look for if your cannabis is flushed? Nope. Do they look if your cannabis is ripe? Pre-ripe or post-ripe? Not at all. What's a really common thing that you can just see with your own eyes? Nutrient burn is something easy you can see because you can actually see when your cannabis is physically burned. So if they've got poor trim quality, you can see that not the bud itself, the inflorescence of the cola structure, but the leaf is actually tan because it was burned internally from either chemistry that was too much, like chemistry overdose, like nutrient overdose, or nutrients that were locked out. Looking at old weed is easy because it's a different color, right? Like it's tan. Why is it tan? Because all the chlorophyll has oxidized out of it. You can look at that herb and know that it's over a year old based on just its color alone. And what's really interesting is, can states that have mandated lab testing sell cannabis that's over a year old and disgusting and should not be consumed for humans? Yes. Why? Because cannabis does not have shelf life time. Like there's no regulation for shelf life stability. And I hate to break it to you, but cannabis is not a shelf stable product. It's an herb, right? So your beer, your cheese, your wine, those are all extracts. And those extracts are being preserved in bottles or in wax that are dark colored and in places that aren't in the light, right? So those extracts are being preserved. They're not herbals. Cameraman, how long do you keep your broccoli?
I eat it right away.
Right, you eat it right away, because if you didn't, what would happen to it? It would go bad. The same thing like your herbal cannabis goes bad. How ripe is your cannabis? Is it pre-ripe? Is it post-ripe? Or is it ripe? Cannabis, just like a banana and just like you and me, it has a ripening point. But the cannabis industry has no regulation to cannabis ripeness or shelf life stability. If you have a jeweler's loupe and you know how to use it, we teach you that in the interpreting program and with our interpreting tools, we can show you how to look inside of a flower and determine if the trichomes are full of cannabis chemistry or not. We can tell you how to smell for different funguses like Botrytis cinerea, and the fact that powdery mildew doesn't produce a smell, but you can see it. It's so interesting that people in the cannabis industry believe that powdery mildew is systemic and Botrytis cinerea isn't, when it's actually the opposite. If you're really serious about cannabis quality, detecting the good quality from the bad, you probably want to get into the interpreting program. It's our cannabis sommelier program. We have the first level of cannabis certification online now at trichomeinstitute.com.